Recently, our favorite Protoss player, Hero, played against Solar in the Masters Coliseum. Now, this is game number 1, and I thought his build was so fantastic, I wanted to try it out straight away, until I realized it is possibly the worst build I've ever seen Hero do. Now, put simply, it is a 2-base, 7-gate, Blink Stalker all-in that looks a lot like a Glaive Adept Pressure. So your Zerg opponent is going to be preparing for Adepts, and you're just going to show up with a massive Blink Stalkers, and it's really fun to micro and looks really, really cool. Unfortunately for Hero in this game, Solar just builds a bunch of Zerglings, jumps on top of him really early, and shuts it down. But it's really great fun. Hero's having a great time at the moment. He's pushing forward, he's sniping roaches, damaging the hatchery, and it's looking really good. I was like, this build is the best. And then, Zerglings come in. They start to get some surround, they force mass blink out of Hero. I think Hero could have dealt with this a bit better with his micro, but the Zerglings get on top, Roach Ravager trades really well, and Hero eventually gets pushed back as more Zergling reinforcements come in. So it turns out Stalkers are not the best against the highest level Zerg players if you're doing a 2-base all-in. Really, the defense is exactly the same as you do against Glaive Adepts, and Zerg players at the top level like Serral and Solar will shut it down. But for people like you and me, I think it'll go pretty well. So I want to show you how to do this build order and how I haven't lost with it yet. So let's get right into the build order. Of course, we want to start with a 14 pylon on the low ground, followed up by a 16 gateway and a 17 gas. Make sure you're really confident in rallying your nexus to build these buildings. Don't select a probe that's already built. You don't want to be messing with your mineral line saturation. So just like in this example, I'm going to be rallying to the natural on my 20th probe to build a 20 nexus. After 20 nexus, we build 20 core, 21 gas, and then finally 22 pylon. This is the most standard build order you can do, so really nail it. When your core finishes, we're going to start up an Adept, Warp Gate, and then we build a Twilight with our first 100 gas. You can chrono boost the Adept if you want, you don't have to. After the Adept finishes, we're going to want to build a Stalker. This is going to be used to deny Overlord scouting, and ideally, we're going to use it in the main base, and we don't want them to see the Twilight, the Robo, and a bunch of gateways. When you have 100 gas, you're going to build a Robo, and we're going to leave 3 probes in each gas geyser. If you're doing the Glaive Adept build, you'll be taking probes off the gases, but in this build, because we need Stalker and lots of gas, make sure you're mining as much as possible. We have completed the wall at the front, and at 3 minutes and 45 seconds, you're going to build a pylon, 2 gateways, and a 3rd gas. In this game, I forget the pylon, but it's actually not the biggest deal. I was just experimenting around with it. And of course, most importantly, you get blink when you have 150 gas. Now from here, you want to start a warp prism and start adding 3 more gateways for a total of 7. And you want to begin warping in Stalkers. It is important to note that we've actually cut workers because we have no intention of taking a 3rd base. This is an all-in, so just get to 2 base saturation with a 3rd gas. Because we're going to need a lot of supply, since 7 gateways is a lot of production, we're going to build 2 pylons before we move out, and then every time we warp in during the fight, go home and build 2 pylons. So this is where the fun begins. At 5 minutes, you should be across the map with your first warp in. You should have 8 Stalkers and ready to push the Zerg base. Now you actually don't have to rush with this build, okay? Because of Stalkers, you can be quite relaxed and patient, because if your Zerg opponent actually knows what they're doing, they're going to be cutting drones and building mass units anyway, and your army gets better the bigger it is. So take a deep breath. You do not want to be fighting on creep, because the only way you really lose this is if they get a massive Zergling surround, or roaches chase you down on creep. So in this game, I actually wait for another warp in, and my observer to come across the map. You want to be attacking, not up a ramp, so this is why I've come from this angle, and he had really good creep spread, so it delayed me, but that's totally fine. Now with your first push, if they only have roaches, make sure you're trying to target them down as best as you can. If Zerglings appear, you immediately need to run away and get off creep as quickly as possible. You want to blink your front Stalkers back, and then stutter step a move back, blink the front again, and repeat. If you actually survive the first Zergling push, then you're in a really good spot to start snowballing the game, as long as you don't lose too many Stalkers. Every time he comes forward, I just keep cutting back and slowly start picking up these Zerglings. Zerglings are the scariest units in the game when you're playing Stalkers, so you just need to kite off creep and away from it, and slowly but surely start thinning through the Zergling numbers. So this is what really went wrong in Hero's push. Solar got right on top of him with Zerglings, pushed him back really quickly, and didn't allow him to get a massive warp in. Now you can start spending some money on Zealots. You're not going to have enough gas to do continuous 7-gate production, so that's totally fine to warp in a few Zealots. Don't add them to your main army, just keep them in the back, so that if the Zerg actually does commit, you can zone with your Zealots and push some Zerglings away. You really don't want them to just run right into Roaches and Queens because they'll die really quickly. Now obviously this is the perfect build to practice your Blinkstalker micro, so let me just talk about that really quickly. It is really simple. It is a 3-step process. First, you A move, and then you select the front of your army that is about to be attacked. You blink them back, ideally dodging the shot of the roaches, and then you move command your entire army back, and repeat. So this fight is a really good example of this, because I am not losing any units, but he is slowly bleeding out Zerglings, Roaches, and he'll start to lose Queens over time as well. The entire game plan is just to continue doing this until you win or you lose. It turns out that this is actually a really frustrating style to play against if you don't shut it down immediately as the Zerg, because you've had to cut workers, so your economies are actually quite even, and the Stalker Ball is only getting stronger, whereas your Roachling Ravager, not the best. So usually your Zerg friend will get really frustrated and do this big committed push. Make sure you don't lose the Warp Prism. But if you trade really well and you just keep blinking your Stalkers back, they're going to overcommit into this, just like this Zerg player did. Then, as soon as this happens, you can get really aggressive. You can start blinking on the Queens, blinking on Roaches, Ravagers, anything you like, and start tidying up their entire army. At this point, the game is just over. But you do not have to rush, just keep warping in. The only way you can lose is if they get a massive surround. So I can totally see why Hero went for this Blinkstalker all-in. Imagine with Hero's amazing micro, how effective this would be. He probably wouldn't lose a single Stalker. But Solo in his game, of course, was super well prepared and shut it down at the source at the very beginning. If it snowballs, if you get the first warp in of 7 Stalkers up, you're actually going to be in a great spot, and I think Hero would have taken the win. Of course, you can never know. It's sort of a what-if scenario. But in this game, I'm going to take the win for sure. I'm now so far up in supply, my opponent is pulling drones off his third base, it's not looking good, and of course, the single G comes out. And so now I have another example. In this game, I didn't even do the build properly. The Warp Prism isn't across the map at 5 minutes, so I have to start warping in at home. But it's totally fine, because we're not in a rush with this. Just make sure that you're not missing warp-ins. That's the key. Having a bigger army is the most important thing, way more important than hitting a really crisp timing. So again, in this game, I don't want to attack up a ramp, and I also don't want to commit too far on creep. It might be said that I might commit a little bit too much, and this game looks really similar to the Hero vs Solar game. He gets a great surround, so I'm going to have to use some Warp Prism micro, try and save as many Stalkers as possible, and at this point it's not looking good for me. I've lost a lot of units, but I haven't been completely pushed off the map, and I still get my 7 Stalker warp in, so I'm still feeling quite good. He traded his really big, strong Zergling presence on the map for that. So now it was time for round number 2. In terms of Warp Prism control, make sure it's about 1 screen away from any creep, so Queens can't come forward, so Ravagers can't really come forward without committing off creep, and that way it won't get sniped, and you'll have a really strong, continuous warp in point. I'm taking it really slow here. I see Ravagers, I see Roaches. He's obviously very committed. He has a big army, so I just need to keep getting my warp-ins done. Once again, I've warped in some Zealots. I'm not adding them into my main army. I have them on a secondary hotkey, and they're just sitting. They will zone any Zerglings that come and surround me, or if they overcommit, like in this spot. So I have to run back. There's so many Zerglings here. I blink, blink, blink. Zealots come in, and now he gets a bit scared and disengages. So in that fight, I think we lost 1 Stalker for about 10 Zerglings. Might have been a bit more. But we're fighting off creep, so we can kite back as much as we like. He's going to now start using some Ravagers, and you're going to have to get really good with microing around this. It just takes practice. You just need to know where it's going, and stay calm. Blink away from that spot. It's okay if you take a few Ravager Biles, just don't take too many. So keep pushing forward, bleeding out the Zerglings like I'm doing in this situation. Always go home. Once you warp in, you need to build 2 pylons at home. That's the magic rule for warping in off 2 bases and 7 gateways. That way, you'll never ever get supply block ever again. So there we go, I'm dodging Ravager Biles, still trading out more Zerglings. He's up about 10 army supply during all of this. But obviously Roaches aren't very supply efficient, so we actually have a much stronger army. As long as we don't lose our Warp Prism to these Ravager Biles, we're in a great spot. And again, we can fight off creep for all day. Now the longer this game goes, I think about adding a 4th gas, just to supplement our Stalker production, because they do cost a lot of gas. And ideally you're not warping in any Zealots, just pure Stalker. The micro is going to go back and forth in this game for a long time. He's going to commit one last final push to try and break this with some Zerglings. Once again, they are the key. And we managed to dodge the Ravager Biles. Eventually, some Zealots get warped in, and now he's committed off creep. We can blink on top of him. I guess in this situation, I choose not to blink on top of him straight away, but we're still trading so well. And he even makes one slight miss micro, and he loses a lot of Roaches as he moves away. Now I blink forward. I'm super confident at this point. We've finally broken him, in my opinion. Although you still have to be just that little bit careful. It really is a great feeling when you finally break through, because you're going to start killing the Queens, really start popping any Ravagers, and it's just such a great feeling, because if you play long macro games versus Zerg, you know how frustrating it can be? So just doing this really easy, simple 2-base timing attack that really focuses on your micro is just a really rewarding feeling. Now Endo actually does go into hold for about another minute, which is really well played by him, but we're not stopping. Our Blinkstalker ball continues to grow, and eventually we finally break him. The great Filipino Zerg player is beaten, and of course, the multiple Gs. Now I have one final example game to show you guys, and that is a game where your opponent doesn't fully respect the all-in. They might build a few too many drones, they might not have enough roaches and zerglings out immediately, so your push can come right in and start dealing damage. And in this example, I'm able to focus down roaches immediately. I don't lose anything. There's not a massive zerglings that can really scare me. So I start trading extremely well from the get-go with my very first push. And this is the advantage of hitting a very crisp timing, that you're just going to be killing a lot of players' third bases because they didn't respect your push. In this case, I get a very easy kill on third base. I get forward, I snipe a queen, I'm able to kite back and kill a bunch of zerglings as well. It's all going really, really well. So this game ends up going exactly like all the others. Eventually my Stalker Ball just gets too big. I've done a lot of economic damage, so it's no surprise that I have an overwhelming army advantage. And I just really want to thank Hero for showing me this build order. Even though he didn't win with it, you can still learn from pro gamers and their losses, because oftentimes their build orders that they do, especially these sharp, crisp 2-base all-ins, are really, really smart. And if you want to see how Hero wins in the Protoss vs Terran matchup, then be sure to watch this video here.